This episode is a continuation of our conversation last week. We were talking about dealing with stress and the impact putting a brave face on things can have. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, that's okay. You'll still get a lot out of this one as well, but I'd recommend going back and having a listen to the week before. So one of the things we talked about last week was consciously riding the roller coaster by leaning into a stressful event and prioritizing recovery after that event has passed. So today, I'm going to be sharing my 3 favourite active recovery processes to help you do that. Let's get started, shall we?
Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Project Joyful podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Tutty, your medical herbalist and high performance coach. So, hey, Project Joyful isn't just about being happy. It's about consciously creating a life you love. It's about remembering how to reconnect with your soul-centered joy. You know, that joy that comes from doing what you love, from living on purpose, and from being in a life that allows you to experience deep joy moment by moment. So, hey, let's get started, shall we?
So what do we mean about recovery? One of the things that it's really helpful to understand is how we actually respond to stimuli in our environment or to our lives. And it's something that's had a lot of research in it. It was pioneered by a chap called Hans Selye, who really started to discover, based on how veterans were experiencing trauma from war, how our body responds to stressful events. So the great news is that we are designed to perceive something that's potentially stressful, potentially a threat, and then we make a decision about it. We decide whether in fact it is a threat. We respond to that, and then we recover from that. And the important thing to remember is that these events can be happening inside or outside of us. So, we have these real physical events, such as you step out onto the street without looking, you hear a car in your environment and you stop, you freeze, you're back on the sidewalk and you're safe. It's an external event. But you can also have internal events, which is really prevalent in where we find ourselves today, which is where we are making an assumption about something, and that assumption triggers a physiological response in our body. If the assumption we've made is that we are facing a threat, then that is one cascade that happens through the body. If the assumption that we're making is that it's something positive or good, then that's a completely different cascade of chemicals that prompts a physiological change in your body. And the interesting thing is that we are constantly evolving. We're constantly learning from our experiences. Our subconscious is filing these away so that we can draw on them as quickly as possible, and that allows us to determine what's threatening and what's not. But what it means is if we've filed something away in the early parts of our life, which we've decided is threatening, and actually it turns out that once you're bigger, once you're a grown-up, it's no longer threatening, we need to update that information that we're storing in our subconscious. Otherwise, every time we come across that particular environment or that particular stimuli, it's likely that we are perceiving it to be threatening, even though it may not be. So what happens if we remain stressed? So as I said, our body is designed to perceive something as stressful or as threatening. A cascade of physiological responses happen in our body, and then we recover from it. But the challenge we have in today's life, with everything being so busy, is that we are moving from one stressful event to another. And that's because we are managing so many conflicting demands. We're working late into the night, or we're having devices open late into the night. And we are also always on. So, people can always get hold of us on our mobile phones or through social media or through email. So we're not actually able to step down from our environment. So as I mentioned, this chap, Hans Selye, he did a lot to really pioneer stress and how our bodies respond to different environments. And he coined this thing called general adaption syndrome. So he said when we face an event which is threatening, the first thing that happens is that we go into alarm. So that's your fight or flight response. Your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate goes up because you need to get more oxygenated blood circulating around your body. Your adrenal glands pump out a whole bunch of cortisol, which gives you that burst of energy. So this is when you're like totally alert, totally on fire, deciding whether to fight or to flee. And then what happens is we enter in another stage. So if that stress remains, we enter in this resistance stage, which is where we're staying on high alert, But our body is starting to repair the downside of all of this flood of chemicals. So your blood pressure and your heart rates begin to reduce and your cortisol does start to go down. And if you have no more stress, then your body just returns to normal. But if you're dealing with high stress on a daily basis, even though you may not actually be feeling it, then what happens is that your body adapts to that and it begins to repair alongside you living with that high stress. And in this resistance phase, it can show up through our emotions. So we might be a bit more irritable, we might get frustrated easier, and we might find it harder to concentrate. Now, the challenge with this is that if you stay in this resistance period for too long, then eventually things start to break down. You get that exhaustion due to prolonged stress. And this is really, really common. I see a lot of this in my herbal medicine clinic. And this is where you have people who are tired for no known reason. They may be experiencing anxiety or depression, and they're just finding it really hard to cope with any stress. Any small thing just sets them off. Now, one of the things that Hans Selye discovered in his research is that because we are responding to internal and external stimuli or environments, getting out the right attitude can help you to move a negative stressful event into a positive one. So there's a lot we can do using all of our resources, including our minds. So there are two areas of focus because we are talking about increasing energy this week, and in terms of recovery, there are two areas of focus that are going to help us boost our energy. So of course, the first thing is to reduce stress. Now that we can do this in focusing on three different aspects of that. So the first one, of course, is eliminating the cause of the stress. Now, sometimes that's not possible, and we have a stressful thing going on in our lives. So another thing we can do is use the resources of our mind to detach from the outcome. So seeing things as they are, not worse than they are. The mind works in a way where we have a tendency to see the negative rather than the positive. So it's about seeking to rebalance that and detach from the outcome. And then the other thing you can do is you can change your emotional state. So you can move from, noticing, awareness is the first key, noticing the emotional state that you're in and then choosing to bring another emotional state through your body. And you can do this, just even through a piece of music that you love that always makes you feel happy, for example, or moving your body. And we're going to talk more about movement later on in the week. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we want to begin to build in recovery periods. And this is something that we generally don't tend to be very good at. But it's crazy because athletes know how powerful it is to have recovery periods in their training. So why don't we? Why don't we do it? Why don't we give ourselves the gift of recovery? My challenge to you today is to begin to do that, to build recovery periods into every day of your life. Now, what are these? Well, they can be things like formal relaxation, so that yoga class that you enjoy, or meditation. It's also things like making sure you're getting the right amount of good quality restorative sleep. Now, research has found that being in nature triggers restorative processes in your body. But the great thing about this is that remember how your body responds to internal and external stimuli. So because of this, just looking at an image of nature, a picture on your wall or on your phone, is also going to do a similar thing in terms of triggering those restorative processes. And then the other thing you can do is stack positive emotions. So get that music on that you love, or those snacks from a really happy holiday that you had, and make some time, schedule it into your diary to either listen to that music, move your body to the music, or go through those photos and just really allow yourself to feel the positive emotions that you feel when you're listening to that music, or when you're thinking about that amazing holiday that you had, or that afternoon out in the park with the kids, anything like that that's going to make you feel positive and happy. Alrighty, so when we're looking at recovery periods, we want to maximize the efficiency of these things. So what you want to do is you want to have your recovery periods so that they are creating distance physically and psychologically between the thing that you're recovering from. So if you want to recover from work, for example, then the thing is to turn off anything that's going to remind you of work. So turn off that work phone and take that time of being physically away from the location. Do things that you tend to go down the rabbit hole. If you know those things that you just get lost in time, whether it's colouring in, or you build model motor cars as a hobby, whatever it is that just fascinates you and arouses your curiosity, those things that you're engaged in them, you just totally lose track of time. Those are the things that you want to be building into your week. And make sure that there is something that you enjoy. So, a lot of people are like, they're going to the gym to recover, but they're doing a class that they absolutely hate. That is not recovery. That is good for fitness potentially, but it's not recovery. So you want to make sure that there is a positive connection between what you're doing and where you're doing it. And the other thing is to make sure that the recovery thing that you're doing makes sense to you, so that there is coherence between what it is you're doing, where you're doing it, why you're doing it, how you're feeling with it. So then your brain's not like, I don't really understand this. Your brain likes everything to fit together. So when we look at recovery, there are different aspects to recovery. There is a physical, there's a mental, there's an emotional aspect, there's also a spiritual aspect to recovery. So what are the signs and symptoms that we are recovering? So when we look at the physical, we're looking at our blood pressure. So our blood pressure is within a normal range, our heart rate is within a normal range, and our body is replenishing those energy stores. So that's about your blood glucose and your muscle glycogen. When you are seeing those things, you know that you are experiencing physical recovery. In terms of mental recovery, you find that you're able to concentrate better, and it's easier, it's free-flowing, and you also have no challenges in terms of making decisions. You're able to take decision. And in terms of our emotions, you've got those positive emotions coming through your body, you've got that sense of joy, you're connected with your purpose, you're feeling motivated. So what can you do looking at these different aspects? Because you need recovery in all of these aspects. So what are the things that we can do to encourage recovery in these different areas? So the first thing is on our physical aspect. As I said, we've got to make sure we get enough rest, and this is primarily about getting good quality sleep. And don't worry, I'm going to be sharing some tools and techniques on how to do that a little bit later. You want to make sure that you're getting enough water in your body, and as we talked about yesterday, you really want to focus on that great nutrition. So we're talking about nutrient-dense foods, low in trans fats. You're looking at the plate and it is an array of vibrant colours. So we don't want that plate that's full of the brown and beige stuff. We want all of those colours on the plate. In terms of our mental recovery, this primarily comes down to being able to detach. So it's about taking yourself into different environments. It's about creating different spaces, where you can just sit in a corner of the room that you enjoy with the sun on your back and reading a book, for example, is detachment. In terms of emotions, this is about finding meaning in your day, discovering your reason why. And you don't need to focus on the all-encompassing purpose. Your reason why can change from moment to moment. So, for example, if you're playing with the kids, your reason why will be, I really want to enjoy a fun, loving, strong connection with my kids. I just want to have a bit of a play. That's meaning. Building in relaxation and focusing on awareness. So just being really aware of what those internal thoughts are that are going inside of your mind, because what you're thinking, you will respond to on a physiological basis, and this will trigger emotions in your body. And then in terms of our spiritual recovery, this is about being aligned with our sense of who we are and why we're here. It's about experiencing that connection, and it's about having a sense of purpose in our day-to-day. So let's talk about sleep. Sleep is so important. There's so much research around at the moment about how important it is, both in terms of our health markers, the sense of our well-being, our ability to function, our productivity, and of course our increased energy. We all know what it's like when you've had a night where you just haven't been able to get a decent amount of sleep. You are just out for the count the next day, right? And sleep is very much about that Goldilocks principle, not too little, not too much. So the researchers say that less than 6 hours is technically called sleep deprivation. More than 9 hours is oversleeping. And either of those are not good. So either of those are not helpful. You need to find the right amount of sleep for you, which is around 7 to 8 hours, and you need to do it consistently. So they're also saying, when people are getting 5 or 6 hours sleep during the week, and then on the weekends they're sleeping in to recover, that is just as unhelpful as oversleeping or undersleeping. And they call this social jet lag, which is where you're getting up later, or your period of sleep that you're experiencing is more than 2 hours different between what you get on a day-to-day basis during the week. And this has been linked with some metabolic conditions in terms of your health and also with increased obesity. They found that being able to switch off from the day helps you to sleep longer and to sleep deeper. And this is where you get your more restorative sleep. And so the way to do that is to create a sleep routine that helps you to switch off. It helps you to unwind. The other thing to bear in mind, and this is the same for every day that we're talking, it's really important to rule out any underlying health conditions because the secret is to address those. So make sure that you're not suffering from obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, which is where you stop breathing and then you wake yourself up even though you might not be aware that you've woken yourself up to start breathing again. You get little skips in your breathing rate, and this obviously is going to disrupt your sleep, but it also can have some long-term health implications as well. So if you think that might be a case where you remember you've woken up gasping or you're a significant snorer, get it checked out by your doctor just for peace of mind, just to rule it out if nothing else. Okay, tips for a great sleep. So I'd like to introduce you to my two cats. This is Max and Jasmine, and as you can see, they are experts in great sleep. These guys can sleep anywhere, anyhow, anytime. Now, what research is showing that is that ideally we want 8 hours of deep, healing, restorative sleep. That's the goal, and this is going to be a life changer for you. So many of my clients that I've worked with, and they're saying, getting the quality sleep has just changed my life completely. So don't underestimate the importance of this. So as I said, it's important to be consistent on this. So you need to decide what time you're going to go to bed and what time you're going to wake up. And you need to stay with it every single day, even on the weekends. Now make sure that your sleeping environment is maximized and dialed in for getting great sleep. So keep your bedroom as your bedroom. Okay, this is reserved for sleeping and for intimacy only. So the TV's not in there anymore, you're reading in a different room, you're eating in a different room. So that your mind knows when you enter that room, okay, it's sleep or it's intimacy. Nothing else is going to be happening in this room. Keep your room calm, keep it clean, dust and light free, and you want to minimize noise. So, look at getting those noise cancelling curtains and just really doing everything you can to quieten down the room. And make sure that your phone gets put in a different room. Use a manual alarm clock to get you awake in the morning. And you want to be removing or minimizing blue light. So this is the light that comes from laptops, TVs, your phone, some alarm clocks. Just get that out of the room as well. And the reason we want to do that is because the blue light resets your circadian rhythm. So your mind's going to be going, oh, there's blue light. Okay, sunrise, let's go. And really what we want to be doing is sleeping. And you want your room to be on the cooler side in terms of temperature, so around 15.5 to 19.5 degrees Celsius, that's 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So how do you create a great sleep routine? This is about dialing things in, so being really aware of what's working for you and just tweaking stuff until you get the perfect sleep routine. The first step is to make sure that you are aware of what time you need to wake up tomorrow. And then you just take 8.5 hours from that, and that is the time you need to go to bed. So if you know, okay, I need to wake up at 7 a.m. tomorrow, you take 8.5 hours of that, and 10:30 p.m. is your non-negotiable bedtime. What this does, it's going to give you 30 minutes to settle in, and then you get 8 hours of good quality sleep. So do this for you. Work out what time you need to get up in the morning, subtract 8.5 hours from that, and that's your bedtime. And now let's dial in bedtime routine. So as we said, 10:30 p.m. is when the lights go out. That's when you're going to sleep. So let's start from the bottom of this chart. These are all the things that need to happen between when using this example, where you get home, say from work, till when you go to bed. So as you can see, lights out is at 10:30. For about 20 minutes before that, you're going to have a soak in the bath with some lovely lavender essential oil. That's very relaxing and calming. And the 20 minutes is your time, to run the bath, get in the bath, get out, get into your PJs in a nice, calm way. So 10 minutes before you're jumping in the bath, you're getting your clothes ready for work the next day. 15 minutes before that is when you're cleaning up the kitchen. 30 minutes before that is when you're making lunch for tomorrow. 1.5 hours before that is the time when you're just enjoying connecting with your spouse, watching a bit of TV, having a nice relaxing herbal tea. An hour before that is when you're cooking and eating dinner. 15 minutes before you start cooking and eating dinner, you're having a meditation so that you can let go of the workday. 6:30 p.m. is when you arrive home. And that's your bedtime routine. What I would like you to do is you write out that bedtime routine, and then you notice how it is for you, and you keep tweaking it until you dial it into the perfect bedtime routine. So what can you do to get a better quality sleep? So if you've had a rough night, you haven't been able to get to sleep, what are the things that you can do during the day? So if you need to nap, make sure you're not overnapping. So limit your nap time to 20 to 30 minutes. Remove the stimulants, the caffeine and the nicotine for a few hours before bedtime. And if, like me, you're sensitive to caffeine and you enjoy it, I love the taste of coffee, then make sure that you're not having any caffeine after 3 p.m. Move your body every day. We're going to be talking about this in a couple of days' time. Find a cardio routine that you enjoy, and enjoyment is top of the list for this. Do something that you love and schedule it in at least 3 times a week. And get some daylight. So the research shows that when that daylight filters in through our eyes, it helps our body to reset our circadian rhythms. So you want to be getting that sunlight in without being filtered through sunglasses or through car windows or house windows. You want to just be walking outside for half an hour every day, just getting that light onto your retinas. Other things that you can put into your sleep routine. So we've talked about dialing in your bedtime routine, making sure that you become super focused on keep creating the one that works for you and just keep adjusting it until it's perfect. Eat 2 to 3 hours before bed. Make sure that meal is nice and light. So this is not the time to be eating your heavy, rich, high sugar or fatty foods or anything that you personally find a little hard to digest. So if you've got any food sensitivities and you still love it, so you need to have one of those now and then make sure you're not doing it in the evening. As I said, no TV or blue light within 3 hours of bedtime. And run yourself a warm bath. It's super, super relaxing. You can make a herbal bath bag. I will put the recipe in our membership area, so you've got that. And you can use those relaxing essential oils like lavender and chamomile. Make yourself a calming bedtime herbal tea and do things that you personally find relaxing. So this is about what works right for you. So maybe it's a bit of meditation. Maybe you like to do a bit of colouring in, some calming yoga sequences or a little bit of stretching before you go to bed. The next thing we can do is we can look at building in those recovery blocks. So remember we talked about the recovery blocks a little bit earlier, but you really need to schedule them in to make them happen. This is not something that needs to happen as an afterthought. This needs to be front of mind. So schedule in your focused work time according to your circadian rhythm. So do the stuff that you need to be focused on and concentrating in the time when you're most alert. You know, whether you're an early morning person, a late night person, or if you're someone like me who is, I'm afraid, a 7 till 5 person, then schedule that time so that it works best with your personal circadian rhythms. In your focus blocks, this is a time when you're really concentrating. They should be no more than 90 minutes in one go. And then you schedule a 30-minute recovery block straight after. So you do 90 minutes of work, and then you might do 30 minutes of stretching or bouncing or breathing. And I'll give you some ideas for that as well. So during your recovery blocks, you can do stuff like moving your body, do a bit of meditation, some stretching, go for a walk outside. Standing barefoot on the lawn is amazing. I'm going to say rediscovered, because obviously I used to do this all the time as a kid. Rediscovered how energizing this is by accident, where it was a beautiful sunny day. I was doing a bunch of work and I thought, I just fancy just going and standing outside. I was working at home, so I didn't have my shoes on. I just went and stood on the lawn. I was like, oh, wow, I feel so alive. I feel so alert. So yeah, standing barefoot on the lawn, one of my favorites. And when you've been doing something for an hour, what you want to be doing in that hour is you want to be going full on focus for 50 minutes, and then you use that last 10 minutes for recovery. And it can be as simple as just bouncing in place and taking 10 deep diaphragm breaths. You know, these are the breaths that expand your lungs outwards where the tummy goes out. 2x5s, this is a fun one for me. I really enjoy doing this because it's a good way of getting some movement in as well. So it's 5 different exercises that last for 2 minutes each. So you start with 2 minutes of squats, then you do 2 minutes of star jumps, then you do 2 minutes of high knees, which is where you're lifting your knees up And then you do 2 minutes of star jumps, 2 minutes of squats. White mist exercise is a wonderful relaxation exercise that can help with reducing anxiety and just really calming the emotions. And I'm going to put a video up where I will teach you how to do that in the membership area below. The release meditation, there'll also be a link for that. And one of my favorites, of course, is this exercise here where you stand with your hips square, your knees are soft and slightly bent, and you're just rotating your trunk from side to side from the waist, leading from your heart, and your arms are totally relaxed and you're just allowing them to swing from side to side. You can give yourself a little tap on the butt either side if you want to. It's a wonderfully relaxing, loosening exercise. It's brilliant. And do some stretches and making sure that when you're stretching, you're also doing, this across the body stuff as well. There we go, to both sides. So that's some of the ideas for what you can do for recovery blocks.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask you a favour? If our conversation spoke to you today, could you please take a moment to leave a 5-star review? Your review will help people discover this podcast, and together we can create a world where there's even more love and more laughter. And if you want to hear more from the Project Joyful podcast, just click the subscribe button. Bye for now.